So I'm going to talk to you about, tell you about my experience with Python for data analysis and data visualization. So like Pat mentioned, I work for AOL Ireland. We're based near Houston Station. And something about me, so I started with Python myself exactly 2 years ago, with just after the Python Ireland 2 years ago, me and a few other girls founded the PyLadies Dublin, thanks to Vicky. Now it's been 2 years they've been meet up. All the girls meet up every month. It's open to guys also. We need mentors. If anybody wants to learn, it's open to everybody. And once we also organize it in AOL. And I remember when we organized it, I was explaining to the manager of the building that me and other girls called PyLadies were going to have a meeting, and he was wondering if we were making pies, but he wasn't too happy when I told him we were just coding. But yeah, now it's been 2 years. I learned Python in my spare time. I've been a developer for many years, but I was a C++ developer. And 2 years ago, I started to play with Python because I'm very interested in data, and I just realized that then there are so many tools in Python that help with all sorts of data analysis. So this is the agenda for today. I'm going to cover an example of a task that I covered recently in work using Python, and showing you how I proceeded to perform the task. I'm going to show you the tool I used, and these are the three of them. So the ipython Jupyter notebook, the pandas library, and the bokeh library. So the last one, so it feels like nearly everybody talk about most of these three libraries. So I'll try to go quick on the things that have been already said. Just out of curiosity, this be the last exercise for today. So how many of you heard about ipython notebook? And how many of you used it? How many of you use the Jupyter notebook? How many of you use the pandas library? Okay. How many of you use the bokeh library? Good. Okay. So the task that I had in work recently was to do some data comparisons. So just to be more precise, we are introducing a new component that's going to substitute a previous legacy component. And I'm going to talk about the actual components because they're not implemented in they're implementing completely different tech stack. They're not using Python. But what's interesting about this is they both are writing out to a MySQL database, and they're going to use a very similar schema. So the idea was, before we can introduce the new component in production, we want to make sure that it was producing not exactly the same data, but something that was within a specific threshold. And so I use Python to do these data comparisons, also to show the results to others, so we could together investigate about possible problem that we had in the new component. So I'll quickly talk about the ipython Jupyter notebook. Like most of you know, so it's very powerful because you can, in this web-based, you can edit your code, and at the same time you can see in line your code being executed. So it's very easy to modify your code and see your plots being rendered at the same time. But also it's very useful to export your code in HTML or PDF. Yesterday, Steve Holden did a great presentation about Jupyter notebook, but mainly just to recap very quickly. So what happened recently, the ipython notebook got out of the ipython notebook a new project started, which is called the Jupyter notebook. The idea was to extrapolate all the all the things of the notebook, they are language agnostic. So the idea that any other language could take advantage of this powerful notebook. So we have done the Jupyter notebook, which is there and can be used still with ipython, just specifying the ipython kernel. But there are many, many more other kernels that you can use. These are just 3 of them. But if you go on this link, yesterday I checked, there are 51 other kernels you can use. Installing the notebook, it's the Jupyter notebook, as easy as this. You can just do pip install Jupyter, and if you already have the notebook, the ipython notebook installed, you just have to do pip install -u Jupyter. I'm going to try to do a quick demo. I'll be quick because I know you all saw this, but I want to just give a quick overview for anybody that haven't seen it before. So this, it's running on my local machine at the moment, and here are all the documents, the Python notebook, they are available locally. And it's very easy now to create a new document. Just click on new, and you can create a new notebook, or you can click on them. These are the ones running at the moment. For each of them, I can shut down the notebook, or I can open in a different window. Here, the way they look, so as I trying to say before, so the idea is that you can have in the same place the code, and also you can execute and see straight away the output of it. Other interesting thing is that you can run all the cells one after each other, just clicking on run all, but you can usually also just run one cell at a time. And this is the button that you would use, which is supposed to be a play button, but I noticed yesterday when we were in one of the workshops, people confuse it. I don't know, look like a fast forward. But yeah, that's the play button. And it's quite good because you can actually do code completion. And for example, you can also, if it works, doesn't work. Yes, you can also see the signature of your method that you want to use. So in case you're not sure what the arguments are, you just need to do Shift Tab and it will appear. Okay, that's quickly what I wanted to show you about the ipython notebook. And then the next tool, I want to go very quickly over it. It's pandas, and it's one of the most powerful, in my opinion, one of the most powerful tool in Python to do data analysis really, really easily and fast. And sometimes there is loads of documentation, sometimes a bit hard to go through it, but there is so much, tutorial online that it's very easy to learn. And also, if you have any problem, you can go on Stack Overflow and you can always find a solution to it. It's so much used. So pandas is built on top of NumPy, which is another Python library for data analysis. And the main data structure that I want to mention about pandas are series and data frames. Series are one-dimensional table, and data frames are a two-dimensional label table. They're both labeled. And so if you slice a data frame, then you would get then a series back. Pandas not as easy as to install. I installed initially on my machine. There were loads of dependencies. It took me a long time. So then recently, I was looking up on the actual documentation. They are recommended to use Anaconda. Here is the link to it. But what I did recently, I installed on my machine the data science tool, which you can find at this link. And it's a virtual machine environment where you can have all the data science libraries that are needed to do. There are Python, there is R also if you're interested. But basically what what's in there, it's just like a VirtualBox and a Vagrant machine. In a Vagrant that you can install on your machine. It's not dependent on, like it can work on Mac OS, on Windows, and on Linux also. I have it here installed on my machine. Sorry, the other direction. It's running, and that's where it's my Jupyter notebook is running off of it at the moment. So yeah, I'm gonna go very quickly through Panda just to show you how to use it. So the way you import it, it's just, that's very typical. You write import pandas as PD, and then you use through the code. And yeah, it's bigger resolution than I thought, lower resolution, so things are really, really big. But mainly what you can do with Panda, one typical example, you can read in a CSV file. This is an example of a CSV file that I'm reading for my test. And read CSV file, it's really, really powerful. You can, when you have a file, you can do anything with it. It doesn't need to be a CSV. And there are so many different parameter you can pass to read it. In this case, I'm just using it as really basically. I'm telling the name of the file. I'm telling to the method that the first column is going to be the index of the table I'm reading. Here, just down here, I'm showing you how a data frame looks. As you can see here, we have many columns. The columns are the days, and then the index, it's a website ID. I'm going to show you in a minute better what the problem is. Actually, maybe we can start now. So I want to show you how I use Panda to start my data comparison task. So what I do here, I'm just defining the variable. So because we have two data centers, one in Europe, one in US, and they both have their own databases. So then here are just small variable where I want to say from which day to which day I want to do my comparisons. And here I'm using this library, which is very handy, MySQL DB, where I can just build a connection to my MySQL database. I'm passing here the host machine, the user, and the password. And here, you see, it's as easy as these just to do an SQL query and get a data frame back. So PD is the pandas. I'm using the method read SQL. I'm passing this is just a string which have my query. And here I'm making it dynamically because I want to use for all different kind of tables. But that's all really. DB is the DB connection that I created just above. And then the other last parameter you need to pass is just to tell pandas which one are the column that you want to use as an index. And as easy as that, you just get back a data frame, and then you can use all different methods from the pandas library. If we go back to the previous an example, just to see how easy it is to use pandas method, here we have the data frame I described to you a minute ago, the one with website and day, and you can just call the method describe, and is very quickly showing you the typical statistics that you might want to know about a data frame. So for each column, it's telling you how many entries the column has, what's the mean, what's the minimum value, and also is going to show you, in this case, showing the percentile. So in this case, it's telling you that 25% of the values are less than 0, 50% are less than 0, 75% in this column are less than 1. And the max value is 30. So I'm not going to do an overview. I'm not going to go more in deep for Panda, but just want to show you that these are the results of my initial data comparisons. So I was getting big tables like that, which are the data frame, very long table. And what I was trying to get was, I was trying to understand the initial comparison I'm doing is I just wanted to make sure that there was no case where we're missing a website in the new component compared to the old component. So this, after all my calculation with pandas, was showing me that on these days we were having all these websites where you see 0 means we were not missing anything. When you see the item, you're seeing that for that website we were missing 4 entries. So we want to understand where we were missing entries and why, because of course we were trying to fix the problem. We didn't know where this was coming from. So as a result, with pandas, I got these huge tables that would be, now I only show the first 10 rows, sorry, but it's much longer. And it could be even longer when I look at more data, more days. So the idea was, I was trying to find a tool that was able to visualize this in a better way, so I could look at maybe with some colors and see if there was any pattern when the data were missing. And because of that, then I start to look into bokeh, which is it's another Python library. The word bokeh comes from the Japanese word bokeh, and which is written like this. I believe it's pronounced bokeh. I don't know, is there anybody that speaks Japanese? No? So you have to trust me. And so the idea is that it means, in Japanese means blur or haze, and the word came to the English language from the photography word. In fact, it's used nowadays also in photography, and it's a technique that's also called shallow depth of field. And the idea is that they're trying to kind of blur the background of an image, trying to draw attention to the main subject. So the idea is that, you have a picture and you want to, I can show you an example. These are two examples of two pictures I took. The one on the left, it does not use bokeh, but I like the picture because there are cats. So there was no picture of cats, so I had to add it there. There is a bit of blur in the background, but I don't think you can call it bokeh. The second picture is another picture I took of my nephew, Dara, and that's more an example where you can see, the idea is that the background is out of focus, is to give more emphasis on the foreground. And that's just what bokeh is trying to do is the same. When you have loads of data and you want to kind of visualize it, and you want to find a way to visualize the things that you think is important, and at the same time you want to keep a connection with the background. You don't want to completely remove it, but you want to still show something. So the very interesting thing of bokeh is that it combines the strength of Python and JavaScript. So it's able to make your plots interactive, just like it's actually generating JavaScript code. It's very similar to D3.js. It's using a lot of the plots that are in D3.js, not as many yet, but it's really powerful. And I'm going to show you today a couple of examples. Yeah, so bokeh also uses multiple language binding. Python is the primary one, but also has binding for Julia, R, and Scala. And the way it works, it produces a JSON file, which is then read by the bokeh.js library. But the cool thing is also that you can very transparently use it in your ipython or Jupyter notebook, or you can export in HTML very easily. To install, it's just pip install bokeh, or you can use also Anaconda. Bokeh it's open source, and it's produced by Continuum Analytics, which is the same company that produced Anaconda. So I suppose if you use it, probably it's very easy to install. I haven't tried, but I would like to use Anaconda soon. the main things to say about bokeh is that you can have, gives to the user 3 interfaces to do plotting. One very high level, which are called charts, and I'll show you in a minute. It's very easy to create interactive plots with charts, but of course it's more restrictive and you can't choose many things. Then you can go on a mid-level and you can call the interfaces for plotting. And then you can go very low and use models, where you can go and define practically everything of the plot from the grid to the line, but it gets very verbose. Today I'm going to show you charts, and then how I found some limitation using charts, and how I transformed my graph, my plot in a better way using the plotting interface. And here's the demo. Very quickly. Okay, so this is the original one. So I use the heat map as a plotting. So as you can see, here is where I use, first of all, I imported. That's the way I imported it. So as I mentioned, here I'm using the chart, and as I said, the chart is very high level, and but it's very recent. So it happened that in the very latest version of bokeh, actually all the charts were re-implemented, and the heat map was not, which is the one I'm using, was not re-implemented yet. So I had to change my code and look at legacy charts to have it working. And then I'm importing the palette, which is the one that gives the color later on, and then I just have to call output notebook, because I want to display my graph in the notebook. But if you want to export it to a file, you can just change to output, I think it's file, I can't remember now, but yes, it just need to specify, otherwise it will not render. If you don't put this, it will not render in the notebook. So go down where I'm using it. So I want to show you how compact is to use. So here is where I have my data frame, and that's the way I'm using. That's all the lines I'm writing for it. So heat map is the chart I'm using. I'm just saying the data source where I want to, of which should display in the heat map, and the palette are the colors I want it to use. And here it is. Unfortunately, it's not the right definition. Let me see if I can go. See, it's very interactive if you don't have the right definition. You can zoom in and out very easily. But yeah. But yeah, you can see anyway. I'm sorry for definition, but the projector. So let me show you the way it's supposed to be. But here you can see, you can save on a file very easily, also from the notebook, and you can resize somehow, and you can zoom in and zoom out. But yeah, what I did here, I displayed for each network and each day on my data frame how many entities were missing. So we wanted to see if there was any pattern, or if there was anything it could look very easy to the eye. So the problem with the chart I used here is that it was showing me 0 and 1 with the same color, and that's because they are really close in the range. But that's a problem, because 0 is a good thing, 1 it's already really bad. So what I did then, I re-implemented using the plotting interface, and I just want to show you very quickly. It's just a bit more lines, but what I was able to do then was that I was able to define my own function, where I was saying that if there was any missed entry, then I could just color, I was using the right color based on I was comparing against the max value and using the right color to a scale. But what I was able to do then, I was able to say, okay, I want to append white if there was no missed entry. And so I had to write a bit more line of color, more lines in my code. And there you go, that's all the lines. I'll share my notebook if anybody's interested later on. But here it's much clearer than if you only could see it all. But what you can see very easily that we had a problem on this specific day, so we were able to analyze that specific day. But also we were able to notice that there were networks that were completely missing for every day. So then we realized that we had problem with those specific networks. And as you can see, it's very interactive, and it really looks better when you're using a normal resolution. But it's great because you can actually go and see all the, like a real JavaScript. You can actually see when you go over each cell, it tells you all the X and Y, and also tells you missing entries. But you can also change all this value. You can make you can make display whatever you want. Yeah, that's what I want to show you. If you are interested in bokeh, there are many, many more type of plotting you can do, and they're really interactive. And if you want to know more, you can look at their Twitter account, or even on YouTube. They have many, many, many examples of speeches where they can, or tutorial that go through every step. And so that was my speech. I hope that I gave you some new pointers to learn something new about data visualization. And I also want to just share a little experience. So I really want to encourage anybody that have, when they asked me to do this speech, as the first thing I said no, because I thought, why would I have to talk about Python when I've been using Python only for 2 years? I mean, there are people here using for many, many years. But then in the end, I just changed my mind and decided that even I was afraid to do it, I wanted to give this speech. And this really made me learn a lot about myself. I met loads of new people, and I hope I taught you something new. So I just want to share this quote from Eleanor Roosevelt that's about the fear of failure, which is I really think strong fear of failure. It's typical of girls, but it's not only, I know. And I just want to share this quote, which say, you gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. So you must do the things that you think you cannot do. So the idea is that, that doing the things that you think you cannot do, you can show yourself that you can actually do it and gain courage. So I just want to share this experience and say, if you think somebody asks you to do something and you think you can't do it, just have courage and believe in yourself, and you can do it. And yeah, that's all from me. That's my Twitter account. Thank you. Thank you.
Does bokeh have widgets at all? Like, little sliders that you can...
Yes, actually there is. I didn't mention there is a bokeh server also that they are kind of re-implementing at the moment, but it will let you to do much more interaction. So where you have a server where you can do and call function. And there is, if you go on the website, there are a few widgets that, with like a slider you said, where you can do things in real time using the bokeh server.
Cool, thanks.
You started using Python for fun, was that, and then you introduced it at work?
Yeah.
And how did that work out?
Well, I'm not the only one. Yeah, there are other people using Python. I'm not the first one using Python in the company. It's not the first language. We use some other languages, Java, C++, Erlang, that are the main core language. But there are many groups using Python as a scripting language. So it's not that I have to introduce from scratch. So they were okay with me using Python. It's actually about 3 years ago, there was a management want to kind of decide for our team, data team, which scripting language should we use, and there was a vote between all the engineers, and the top was Python. So then we officially decided to use Python for any kind of scripting language. So they were happy when I used it.
Great talk. Thank you very much, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Is it possible to, the interactivity part, does that require an active running notebook in the background, or is it possible to export that to some static page and host it?
Yeah, you don't need the notebook at all. It's just when at the beginning I specify the output to notebook, you can specify to have the output to file, and you can run it from a normal Python script. You don't need the notebook at all. You're welcome.